Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. There can only be one DRF race of the day for the first Saturday in May, and it's the Grade 1 $3 million Kentucky Derby. Race number 12, Churchill Downs on Saturday. We're going a mile and a quarter. Let's take a look at this overflow field, and remember to view free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. Mike Zandon, the number 10 for Chad Brown, the winner of the Bluegrass at Keeneland, is the morning line favorite, but you could make a case for 8 or 9 of these 3-year-olds. I think this is a talented, deep, and very competitive and evenly matched group.
I agree with you. Zandon, comes into this race with a lot of momentum, Dan. So I'm not, that surprised to see him placed as the morning line favorite. I don't know if he'll actually go favored, in this race over Epicenter, who, just feels like he's been sort of towards the top through most of the prep season. But listen, those two horses are both good, and there are a lot of different ways to go outside of them as well.
In some ways, one of the keys to this race is the number 4, Summer is Tomorrow, who's going to be a gigantic price, because as we take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector, they have Summer is Tomorrow, who was the leader in the UAE Derby last time out, as the Kentucky Derby pace setter in a red bar fast-paced scenario. I'm not sure Summer is Tomorrow is fast enough to make the lead from a horse like Classic Causeway, who figures to be quarter-horsed out of there. That's his best running style. Your thoughts as to whether Summer is Tomorrow is going to be on the lead, and as to whether the UAE Derby winner Crown Pride can stay close to these fast fractions?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I didn't, when I looked at the race, I didn't see Summer is Tomorrow on the lead in here, but maybe he will be. He has shown speed in some of his races in Dubai. So we'll see. I do think Classic Causeway is obviously going. It'll be very interesting to see what the two leading California contenders in this race, Messier and Taiba, do, because neither one of them are slow horses, and they could certainly be forward in here.
I think Messier is absolutely going, and I think Taiba, the break is the key, because he is very inexperienced. He's never really been in behind horses in a race situation. I think they want to get away from the gate and get into the clear. Let's talk about a horse that's going to really appreciate it if the pace is fast, and that's the number 1, Mo Donegal, who in my opinion is one of the best closers in this field. Let's watch his victory in the Grade 2 Wood Memorial, going a mile and an eighth, and distance is this horse's friend. He got a beautiful ride from Joel Rosario, who hit all the right holes, saving ground in behind early voting, who made the pace. He gets to the outside, but let's give Mo Donegal some credit. Okay, the trip worked out. He still had to run down a loose, talented horse in early voting, and he did it.
Yeah, he did. This is a really nice performance. Another step in the right direction for Mo Donegal. And I think you pointed out the key to this horse, Dan, is that from day one, he's just looked like a horse who was really going to appreciate more distance when he finally got it. The only loss on his card since they stretched him out, the Holy Bull off the layoff on a speed favoring track. And even that day, he was finishing better than anybody. He just sort of got himself on track too late. The distance works for him. It's all about what kind of trip he can pull from the rail here, Dan. He needs a little pace to run at, and he needs a clean run into it.
I know we talked about it briefly on the post position draw recap. How much does the rail bother you at all, or are you simply looking at it as it just adds 2 ticks to my price?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I'm just not worried about him breaking from the inside. Obviously, he's going to need to work out a trip with 19 other horses, sort of breaking to his outside and looking for position. But I think he's tactical enough to get one. And I think if he works out a clean trip, he's a major player in here.
If this track comes up wet, we're expecting a little bit of wet weather in the Louisville area this weekend. He has a tremendous wet track pedigree. Uncle Mo, 20% winners on wet track. The Dam won on a wet track. The second Dam, she was second in the Kentucky Oaks over muddy going. The 2 is Happy Jack, and this is a horse that's going to be a big price in this race. He's eligible for a non-winners at 2 life. Blinkers off for Doug O'Neill. They ran this horse in the Santa Anita Derby. He got blasted by Taiba. He's got to improve.
Yeah, he's just really hard to make a case for. He hasn't run a fast race yet. They ran him in 3 Derby preps out there in Southern California, and he wasn't close in any of them, but he got enough points to get in.
Maybe wet track could help him out. He's by Preakness winner Oxbow, 17% winners with wet track runners. One of the main protagonists in this race is the number 3 Epicenter, who was relatively dominant at the fairgrounds over the winter and into the spring. The only blemish coming in the Lecomte when he was cooked on an extremely fast pace. He had a much better pace scenario when winning the Risen Star in gate to wire fashion, and he showed a new dimension last time out in the Louisiana Derby. He got a very nice inside out trip from the pocket that day, but he finished it up very easily under ridden out fashion. He's one of the fastest horses in the race, tactical speed, top connections, ticks a lot of boxes, Mike.
There's an awful lot to like about him. He's going to be either the favorite or the second choice in this race, and deservedly so. Again, he's just been one of the sort of leading lights in this division going all the way back to the beginning of the year, Dan. Nothing but good races on his card. I personally, when you're trying to make decisions on how to separate these horses, the one thing that nagged me about Epicenter, I know he's fast. I know he's tactical enough, handy enough to get the right trip in here. I do feel like in each of his final 2 prep wins, and he was visually impressive winning, but man, did he get soft trips in both of those races. And that was sort of the deciding factor for me when I was trying to decide whether I was going to use him at a short price or not. I just feel like he's maybe taken advantage a little bit in his last 2 starts. The one time when they forced this horse to race in the Lecomte back in January, he took on a ton of pressure. He still ran really well that day, but he got beat by a long shot.
I think that's a very, very good point because he is going to have to run hard here. Steve Asmussen has actually mentioned it. This inside post forces Rosario to break out of their running. We expect the pace to be fast. He's going to be going a lot faster in the early portion of this race. He's going to have to earn this Kentucky Derby, but he's very good and he's won on wet. Summer is tomorrow. The Timeform US pace projector expected pace setter made the lead in the UAE Derby last time out. He was beaten by Crown Pride. It was the first time they stretched him out in distance. He ran fine. I just don't think he had an excuse to lose.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I didn't see anything different than you did, Dan. They did put him on the lead in there. He hung around pretty gamely until the very late stages of that race. But ultimately, he just could not see out the distance. He got tired and he got run down. And listen, it's not like his form prior to that sprinting, pointed him out as some kind of superior talent. He had a maiden win and an allowance win sprinting on the dirt. When they stretched him out last time, he didn't necessarily improve all that much.
I think it would be a huge mistake to disregard the 5 Smile Happy at a big, big price. Corey Lanerie takes the mount for Kenny McPeak. This horse looked very good in his first 2 starts last year, including winning the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club, a very live prep race, that race at Churchill Downs. Now, he hasn't won this year, but he's only had 2 starts. He's run well both times, pairing up buyer tops. He should get the right pace set up. I think at 20-1, you got to use this horse somewhere.
I agree with you. I'm using this horse for sure in this race. I'm just, perfectly happy to give him a chance to rebound here. I'll admit that I didn't think he ran great in the Bluegrass last time. I also don't feel like he got necessarily the right kind of trip in there. I just sort of felt like Lanerie was a little indecisive into that first turn, whether he was going to go forward or take back. And he ultimately decided to go forward, and this horse got caught on the outside the entire way. I'm going to give him a pass for that one. I thought his return from the layoff, I know that he was no match for Epicenter, but I feel like that was almost a perfect prep race for this horse, Dan. They took him back. They sat inside. They never really went with a run. I think they were prepping him that day, and I think this could be the day. It's not easy to improve, to take the big step forward in the Derby, but I feel like this horse could do it.
And if you know Corey Lanerie, he loves to save ground. I expect him to be on the inside with one of those old Calvin Borel trips from mid-pack behind a fast pace. Run happy 12% winners from wet track runners. Messier is up next. I really think he's a very talented individual. It's just that he's had a few perplexing losses in his career, most notably the Los Alamitos Futurity and his career debut. When he wins brilliantly, as he did in the Robert B. Lewis 2 starts back, and I think he ran very well last time out in the Santa Anita Derby. He was second to Taba that day, but he did a lot of dirty work battling a very fast horse up front. He won the duel. He lost the war. He lost nothing in defeat in my eyes.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. I do feel like he was sort of in the toughest position in the Santa Anita Derby, sort of having to keep the pace setter honest and then trying to deal with Taba at the end of the race. Boy, it's still hard to get a read on exactly how good this horse is, Dan. 3 for 6 lifetime since they've stretched him out in distance to go 2-turn racing. He's 1 for 4, and the only win that Lewis, I know it was a fast race, but against a very weak field. Other than that, I'm starting to get tired of making excuses for this horse.
From Japan is the number 7, Crown Pride. And we saw the Japanese dominate on Breeders' Cup weekend at Del Mar. We saw them dominate on Saudi Cup Day. We saw them dominate on Dubai World Cup Day. Crown Pride scored in the UAE Derby. He ran down Summers tomorrow. He has a lot of upside. I just think he catches a very tough Kentucky Derby field.
Yeah, I do too. And I know these Japanese horses have been winning, everywhere. Breeders' Cup, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, everywhere. They've all been showing up and really running well. And maybe this horse will too. At the end of the day, Dan, I liked his first 2 starts last year as a 2. I liked them quite a bit. I thought he looked like a horse with a lot of potential in winning those races. I didn't like his UAE Derby enough to want to use him in this race. I'll be interested to see how well he runs. I couldn't talk myself into him.
It is worth noting his one bad race came on a wet track. Charge It is the number 8. He is very inexperienced. He's not Taba inexperienced, but he's close. He's only run 3 times in his career. He's very talented. He was a good second in the Florida Derby last time out. It seemed like he ran in spots after breaking a little bit slowly. He's green. I wonder if this race is just a bit too much too soon, but I think there's a big future ahead of this horse.
Yeah, I do too. I do think I think he has enough talent to be a major factor in a race like this. I just wonder if this is the right time for it. He did run pretty well in that Florida Derby, considering all that was thrown at him, the fact that he didn't break great, that he was behind horses and on the outside and just still a little green through the stretch there. I thought all in all, that was a pretty good performance. It's the kind of performance you could maybe go to school on a little bit with Taba too, Dan, because that's what you're up against when you don't break well in races, when you're so lightly raced and inexperienced. I mean, it just causes all kinds of troubles. If Charge It really learned a lot from that Florida Derby experience and can get a better trip in here, I think he can contend.
Legendary Sire Tappet, 17% winners from wet tracks runners. The 9 is Tis the Bomb, and Surface is the Question. I know he has won on dirt. That was an off-turf maiden race at Ellis Park, however, in July of his 2-year-old season. He's made his money on turf and on dirt. He won the Jeff Ruby Stakes as easy as could be last time out, but that was over a synthetic surface.
Yeah, he was really good in that race. I liked that performance from him, and I think Tis the Bomb's a really nice horse. I don't know what you're going to get here as they try dirt. It does sort of feel like they're just taking a shot because they know that they have one of the more talented 3-year-olds around. And you might as well take one more shot on dirt in the Derby. The last time they ran him on dirt, Dan, he was awful in the Holy Bull.
Zandon, the number 10, is your morning line favorite for Chad Brown. Flavian Pratt, he's raced twice this year. The Risen Star, a really good performance when beaten by Epicenter. He didn't break well that day. He was wide off of a slow pace, a pace that Epicenter controlled, and he still was punching on in the stretch. Kind of hinted that he was going to run big in the Bluegrass, and he did. Let's watch his Bluegrass victory, where he was in traffic for a lot of the way. And he just was able to weave his way through horses. And I think that experience is going to benefit him in the Kentucky Derby, where in all likelihood, he's going to have to find several seams.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. This was a very good learning experience for him. I thought his Risen Star was a really good performance without a great trip off the layoff. I mean, listen, this horse has run well in all 4 starts in his career, 3 mile and an eighth races so far for him. And now they're going to stretch him out. And the more you watch him run, the less you're concerned about the distance of this race. I feel like he's going to get it if he can work out any kind of a trip in this race. He's the morning line favorite, but just coming into the Derby with all kinds of momentum.
The 11 is Pioneer of Medina for Todd Pletcher. Blinkers off. This horse was beaten by Epicenter twice. Once in the Risen Star, where he was right up close to Epicenter and could not finish with that horse. Last time out in the Louisiana Derby, up close to the pace, couldn't finish. Maybe removing the blinkers is going to wake this horse up, and he has shown several recent bullet workouts, presumably without the blinkers. I think this horse is a little bit better than he looks on paper. I know there was a lot of buzz about him early in his career. Maybe he has been exposed in his 2 races against graded stakes competition, but his figs stack up.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I don't disagree with that. And with the blinkers coming off, maybe he'll be a little bit further away from the pace this time, Dan, and we'll see if he can produce a little bit more of a finish, because he hasn't really finished that strongly in his 2 prep races when Epicenter just, he was just really no match for that horse. That he didn't run poorly, but he was no match for that horse either time. And he's got to find a way to close that deficit, not just on him, but then, stack up with some other really, really good 3-year-olds.
Taba is the number 12, 2 starts, 2 triple-digit Beyer speed figures, brilliant in both outings, and he overcame some things to win the Santa Anita Derby, most notably stretching out 3 full furlongs and facing a couple of very good horses. Let's watch the Santa Anita Derby. Only his second lifetime start. Trip worked out for him, and that the two favorites, Forbidden Kingdom and Messier, kind of got hooked up in a prolonged duel, but Taba came and got Messier, a more battle-tested horse in the stretch, and it's not like Taba came from 100 out of it. He stayed close to that solid pace.
He did. I mean, there's really no way to knock this performance, especially when you see just the way he's pulling away at the end. Just, running right through the wire there, Dan, going 9 furlongs. I think it's pretty obvious, just on paper, based on his first 2 starts. This horse has as much talent as anybody in this field. They're asking a ton of this horse to run in the Kentucky Derby in his 3rd lifetime start. And as you've already pointed out, if he doesn't break well from the gate in here, it could be game over before he even gets to do anything. But listen, I don't think there's any denying that he could be as good as anybody in this field going forward.
His sire, Gunrunner, has had an exceptional record with wet track horses thus far, a whopping 35%. A lot of wet track pedigree as well for Taba. It's all about whether he is experienced enough to handle the Derby. He's certainly talented enough. Simplification is up next, and Simplification won the Fountain of Youth 2 starts back, despite coming from off of the pace and failing to change leads. In the Florida Derby, he sort of reverted to his old running style. He was up close to the pace. The pace was real solid, and all in all, he ran a fine 3rd. I'm just concerned about him going 1.25 miles in a fast-paced race, but he's a very likable horse.
I agree with that. I wonder if they'll just ride him a little differently this time, Dan. In the Florida Derby, they just wound up being part of the pace in there. He broke well, so they decided to go on with it and sort of contest the pace with Classic Causeway. And ultimately, that just didn't really work out for him. I wonder if they'll revert this time and sort of take him back off the pace a little bit further. He's versatile enough to do that. I can't say that I've ever been this horse's biggest fan, but he did run pretty well, winning the Fountain of Youth 2 back from off the pace. I think that's how they're going to ride him in here.
He is by an excellent wet track stallion, and not this time. Up next is Barber Road. Could this be the time for Barber Road? He's knocking on the door. He placed in the Smarty Jones, the Southwest, the Rebel, the Arkansas Derby. He had chances in all of those races, however, and failed to seal the deal. He got the right setup, I thought, in the Arkansas Derby, when second behind Cyberknife just wasn't as good on that day. But he's a late runner, and I could see him getting a piece with a kick.
That's probably the right way to look at him. Just see if you can sneak him in there underneath. It's hard to see him winning this race, Dan, just based on what he's done so far. He's very consistent. He shows up and he runs every time. He's just not as fast as several other horses in this race. And listen, it's not like those Oaklawn Park prep races leading up to the Derby. It's not like those were the strongest races in the world, and he couldn't win any of them.
The number 15 is White Abarrio, who just beat 3 of these horses in the Florida Derby, which has been a very productive Kentucky Derby prep over the years. Let's watch White Abarrio finish off the Florida Derby. He has really good tactical speed. You can do anything with him. Put him on the lead, sit him in mid-pack, have him in pace pressing mode. Here he runs down Simplification on the inside. You see Charge It on the far outside. White Abarrio just keeps showing up with good efforts, and his buyers have exploded this year as a 3-year-old. His one loss came at Churchill Downs, but he ran very well that day.
Yeah, he didn't run poorly at all in that Kentucky Jockey Cup. That is the one time they tried to rate him and sort of put him over behind horses, Dan, and it didn't work out. Other than that, they just sort of kept him right up close as part of the pace and sort of towards the outside. And he's made no mistakes at all. He's a really good horse. I actually like this horse. I think he's pretty good. I don't like him stretching out again for the Derby. I don't know if he can get the right trip in this race. He was one of the horses, while logical enough and a horse that you could easily make a case for, he was one of the horses I was against.
I have some concerns about his ability at 1.25 miles. I think this post position helps him because, as you mentioned, he likes to be outside of horses. Post 15 allows him a clear shot into the clear going into the first turn. Cyberknife, the 16, was a work in progress earlier in his career for Brad Cox. Sure, he had talent, but at times he would beat himself. He would pull himself up. He had trouble changing leads. Well, in the Arkansas Derby, he put it all together. Let's watch that performance right now where he sat in mid-pack. Florent Giroux pushed the button at the right time. He took over the lead and he finished it off like he's figuring it out. 92 buyer speed figure for Cyberknife, another son of the great young stallion Gunrunner. I think the source is a sleeper in here, Mike, because he is still learning. As you can see, he's drifting a bit, but there's some talent here.
Yeah, I do think he has some talent too. I didn't think this Arkansas Derby was the greatest field in the world, and that bothers me a little bit. But I do respect the fact that I think this is a horse who has run really well in each of his last two starts and has sort of taken steps forward. He just absolutely rambled in that allowance win 2 starts back, and he didn't show so much greenness that day. I didn't like that he was drifting again last time in the Arkansas Derby, but I still thought he did some good things in that race.
The number 17 is Classic Causeway, who swept through the Tampa Bay route to the Kentucky Derby with convincing victories over weaker fields in both the Sam F. Davis and the Tampa Bay Derby. I don't know what happened in the Florida Derby. Yes, he set a fast pace, but this horse was beaten after a half mile. He tired very, very badly. It's tough to take a horse like this off of a bad prep, but I really respect these connections, and he's going to show speed.
Yeah, I feel the same way about him. I know he didn't run necessarily fast races in either of his prep wins at Tampa to kick off the year, Dan, but I still thought he looked good winning those races. I don't know what happened last time, and I didn't hear, any kind of excuse from his connections. I guess they just brought him back, checked him out, found that everything was fine, and ultimately decided to press on to this race. It's not going to be easy for him to wire this field, but I do think he could be a little underrated.
Tawny Port, the number 18, is, I think, one of the more underrated 3-year-olds in this crop. He's only been off the board once in his life, and that was in a Risen Star where nothing went right for him. He did not get away good at all. He broke poorly. He got bumped after the start. He's down on the rail near the back of the pack. He's on hold last. He alters course to the outside, and he runs on late in a race that was controlled up front by Epicenter. He then ran well in the Jeff Ruby Stakes after unseating his rider in the warm-up, and then he came back on dirt in the Lexington a couple of weeks ago with a really good performance. Does he have to find something on from a buyer's standpoint? Certainly he does, but I think he could get the right trip from off the pace.
Yeah, I feel the same way about him. Obviously, he's going to have to take, a pretty significant step forward if he's going to contend in the Derby. I just sort of, got intrigued by him the more I looked at his races. I understand that, his first 2 career wins came on a totally different surface. And then when they switched him for the Risen Star, he could only manage 5th. But I'm with you. I just thought he had tons of trouble in that race and ran way better than it looks on paper. And when they came back to dirt last time, all right, he didn't beat the strongest field in the world. It was only a mile and a 16th. I thought he ran well again, Dan. He was wide every step of the way in there. I thought he won pretty convincingly at the end. And the more I watch him run, the more I feel like he's going to stay the distance of this race.
Number 19 is Zozos, also trained by Brad Cox, blowout winner of his second lifetime start at Oaklawn. That coming on the heels of only 1 sprint race. Last time out in the Louisiana Derby, he made the pace. Epicenter was better than him, but all things considered, for a third lifetime start, he hung in pretty well to be second, and he earned a very fast buyer. I feel the same way about Zozos as I do about Charge It. This might be a little bit too much too soon, especially with Zozos' running style. He likes to be close to the pace.
Yeah, I was concerned about that too. Listen, I do think he's a talented horse. He was very visually impressive when he broke his maiden, or when he won that allowance race the first time they stretched him out. I don't think he was beating anything, but he certainly looked good winning that day. I don't know. I have a tough time warming up to him off the Louisiana Derby. Even if his figure did improve that day, boy, I don't know. He got absolutely loose on the lead. He was not going fast. He took no pressure in that race. And when Epicenter came for him, it wasn't even really a contest in there. I mean, I guess he ran fine and he could obviously improve, but I don't love them coming back in the Derby with this horse.
Number 20, the last horse entered in the body of the race. There are 2 also eligibles, Rich Strike and Rattle and Roll as Ethereal Road. Mr. Lucas takes a shot with him. He ran 4th in the Tawny Port Lexington. The Bluegrass, he was no match for Zandon. His race in the Rebel was okay. He made a move in the stretch, and it looked like he was on his way to victory, and he just couldn't hold off Unoho, who's a nice horse, but a horse that would be a big price in this race. I really liked his maiden win where he missed the break completely and blew by these horses, but this might be a bit too tough.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the race that's going to make him a real contender in here. And the 3, prep races for him, I didn't think he ran terribly in any of them, but he didn't run great either, Dan. I guess they're just going to take him back, try 1 run from off the pace in here and see if he can get a piece.
Click on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel's subscribe button to get the latest videos from DRF TV. We are in the midst of Triple Crown season. Top pick time for the Derby. Check this out, folks. This is how wide open the Derby is. Was that 8 different picks? You're going with Mo Donegal. Distance is his friend. 1 1/8 he loves. 1 1/4 I think won't be a problem. I don't think a wet track will be a problem. Can he get the trip? If he does, he's running late.
That's how I looked at him too, Dan. I've been on this horse basically from day one. I'm happy that he made it here. And now we'll just see if he can work out the right kind of trip. I think he's a major player in this race. Tawny Port, the 18, is my long shot. He's got to improve, but I think he's better than he looks on paper. And I'm also giving Smile Happy the 5. I'm giving that horse a chance to rebound in here.
I just think Epicenter, as I mentioned earlier, just ticks a lot of boxes. He's won at 1 3/16. He has the tactical speed. He's versatile. He's fast. And he's not the favorite as of right now. I'm curious to see what we get from Taba. I think he's talented enough to win this race. The inexperience bothers me, and I do think he'll get bet off of his morning line. I'm curious to see if Pioneer of Medina, as you mentioned, utilizes new tactics with blinkers off, sort of a mid-pack one run, tries to get into the number at a price. 118.510 for Mike, 312.11.6 for me. It's the Kentucky Derby, the one we've all been waiting for at Churchill Downs. Good luck.